The Equally Yoked Show. Get yoked for free.
Welcome back to the podcast. This is the Equally Yoked Show. As we begin to start off this broadcast, glad to have you join me today yet again. We aren't going to be going over a long, it's not going to be a long podcast to say the least. However, we're going to be analyzing some of these clips that have come out of Obama, which are going pretty viral. And we may be looking at a clip of Hillary Clinton. However, depending on how time allows, we will be only going over just several clips here, which I think are quite phenomenal to analyze and maybe go deeper into another video, another live show. So if you're just joining me, welcome to the broadcast. This is the Equally Yoked Show. And email me your thoughts, freedom@equallyyokeshow.com. You say, honestly, bananas and rice is better than Hamburger Helper and ramen noodles. Well, I've never tried bananas and rice, and Hamburger Helper, it's not too bad. Ramen noodles, you can make it taste good depending on how you season it, right? I say season it because you can use just the packets, but you can also use Knorr. You can also add some lime in there, some tapatio, whatever you want to do. Make it spicy. I don't know. All those things. So Brian Taylor comes out with this interview of Barack Obama, and he seems to give him quite some praise here. Now, was it the answers that he was expecting the, renowned Barack Obama to give? Maybe, maybe not. I don't really know. However, it's funny because Barack Obama's sort of out of touch in many ways from when he was in office. And even then, I don't even think he was in touch back then. However, I'm a little I don't know. I wasn't that involved in politics during the Biden era or the Obama era. However, just looking back on everything that he was doing then, you just begin to see a lot of the popularity that he had then, and it was massive, mind you. It was one of the most sort of biggest campaigns in a long time up until Donald Trump. It really was. And so it's funny because Brian talks about that he's never seen any sort of anybody move and flock to him, such as the youth did when they voted for him, speaking on the millennials. But the reality is a lot of the youth and younger vote that came to Donald Trump, that was shocking in it of itself. So, So anyway, even more so than Barack Obama, I'll be the first to say it here. Now, you say, I'm not saying Hamburger Helper or ramen noodles were bad. I just didn't get a whole lot of bananas and rice. Got it. So you say Obama's presidential lawyer was Epstein's lawyer. Exactly. All these weird, look, anyway, despite all the stuff of Barack Obama, let's play this clip and let's just kind of break down just the first couple of minutes here. And then we're going to go into what the title says, Obama breaks his silence on aliens. And interesting. We're going to look at that here on the broadcast and maybe some other stuff. And so let's take a look.
It's important to recognize that the majority of the American people find this behavior deeply troubling. It is true that it gets attention. It's true that it's a distraction. But, as I'm traveling around the country, as you're traveling around the country, you meet people. They still believe in decency, courtesy, kindness. And there's this sort of clown show that's happening in social media and on television. And what is true is that there doesn't seem to be any shame about this among people who used to feel like you had to have some sort of decorum and a sense of propriety and respect for the office, right? So that's been lost. But the reason I point out that I don't think the majority of the American people approve of this is because ultimately the answer is going to come from the American people. And we just saw this in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. It is important for us to recognize the unprecedented nature of what ICE was doing in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the way that federal agents, ICE agents, were being deployed without any clear guidelines, training, pulling people off, out of their homes, using 5-year-olds to try to
bait their
parents. All the stuff that we saw.
Now, what's funny, coming from the border, not even the border czar, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I was trying to go for. The deporter in chief is what I was trying to say. Coming from the deporter in chief, from what he was during his administration, he basically said and called it what it was. He said, as harsh as this may seem, and, the sort of popularity, or rather the lack thereof, the unpopularity of deportations, he said what needed to be said and basically told the media, it is what it is. We're deporting people and we need to do it. And even though, despite that, we might separate people, we just have to do it. We have to secure our borders. And he was one of the top Democrats to deport as many as he did during his administration. And so when he's talking about these stories, which we've debunked here many occasions on this podcast, and many others have done so as well, where they talk about this 5-year-old, this story that went viral. Again, this 5-year-old that was baited by ICE to bring their parents. These instances of where the media loves to lie, and the fact that these Democrats, these top politicians, like to regurgitate that to the people on their social media, on their X accounts, on their YouTube accounts. They say the same things. And then when you look at the evidence, the facts, the same story of the father actually running away, and the 5-year-old was actually taken in by ICE to take care of him, give him food, all this stuff, and the media spins it, and they don't correct their statements on this. And so this is Obama giving sort of his critique on the administration.
Tear gassing crowds simply who were standing there, not breaking any laws. So
again, tear gassing, standing there, not breaking any laws. We're witnessing the unprecedented amount of people impeding law enforcement. In many cases, these people don't really, you see them getting detained on the streets. And then you have Democrats calling from the news outlets, they're going after Americans. They're detaining Americans. They're arresting Americans. And it's like, okay, what do you expect? You want to impede law enforcement? Yes, they are going to get detained. They are going to get arrested. They're impeding law enforcement. You have also the videos that are circulating online of these ICE agents that are saying, this is who you're protecting. You're protecting this child trafficker. This is who you're protecting. And essentially the women that were, I think it was a woman that was on behind the camera saying essentially she doesn't care. So I think we're going to pull that up on another broadcast to look more at that incredible clip that we've been seeing circulate online. So let's continue on with Barack Obama.
So the rogue behavior of agents of the federal government is deeply concerning and dangerous. But we should take a moment to appreciate the extraordinary outpouring of organizing, community building, decency, neighbors buying groceries for folks, accompanying children to school, teachers who were standing up for their kids, not just randomly, but in a systematic, organized way, citizens saying, this is not the America we believe in.
But yeah, we are seeing teachers definitely they're using kids on behalf of their, radical ideals to go against ICE, protesting ICE. And we've seen this in San Francisco. I believe it was San Francisco also, another clip that was circulating of kids chanting these phrases that you see the radicals on the streets who are against ICE. Now they're putting them in harm's way. And it's basically, I mean, honestly, it's no better than Hamas, who's using people, using kids, using women as human shields. It's the same deal. It's the same instance. And even what Barack Obama says, and I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, where he basically says that these average people, talking about these protests, let's let him cook a little bit longer. Brian lets him cook quite a bit.
And we're going to fight back, and we're going to push back with the truth, and with cameras, and with peaceful protests, and shining a light on the sort of behavior that in the past we've seen in authoritarian countries, and we've seen in dictatorships, but we have not seen in America. And that kind of heroic, sustained behavior in sub-zero weather by ordinary people is what should give us hope. And it should remind us that at the end of the day,
it goes back to what we've been saying, is that these people are basically cannon fodder, that the Democrats are going to utilize these moments where they have a martyr, in the case of Renee Good, in the case of Alex Preddy, and many others, where they utilize these moments and say, see, look how bad the Trump administration is. Look how bad it is. And look at how incompetent they are. They can't control their protests, and they get violent. They get out of hand. And this is crazy. You say, I'm in a red city and state, and my local school district had the ICE school kids out protesting ICE Friday, brainwashing the kids. That is sad. That is so sad. And Jerry, thanks for joining us. God bless you. And hope you have a wonderful night. And I do understand that you work early and late. And so this is Obama sort of just spilling the beans here, breaking silence on Trump and the administration. But the deporter in chief here seems to forget, maybe he doesn't forget. I think he's a very, as many know, well, spoken man. But he's very different from his scripted speeches that we typically saw when he addresses the nations and the nation on television when he was president, versus what we've seen him and how he's talked, sort of how he communicates rather in interviews and you name it, wherever he is publicly is very different than his very scripted, very well thought out media appearances when he was president. So this is very different, but different in the sense that he sounds like every Democrat. What do we expect? This is Barack Obama. This is him. This is who he is. He's not this, man who he was portrayed as back when he was president prior to Donald Trump.
The way we get a democracy that's working, the way we get policies that actually are helping working families, get ahead, the way that we restore norms, rule of law, decency.
And by the way, Jerry, you say real quick, the woman that was on the bus, you mean Irina Zurutska? You say they got randomly killed for no reason, and the lack of national news was sad. Yeah, this was something that the only one that I was seeing as the biggest cover story, or was really blasting this out to such a wide audience, was Charlie Kirk. And most conservatives too, but Megyn Kelly, a lot of these folks that were talking about this incident that happened on the bus, which was absolutely tragic. The fact that the person who stabbed her, was in and out of prison 15 times. And even then, I think the report, which I don't think got a lot of news, and I think I need to go back and fact check this. Maybe you guys can fact check me, was actually released again. If I'm not mistaken, I have to go back and check that, which is crazy. I think we need to go back and bring this up on the podcast, on the next podcast.
It's going to be because we citizens are activated and paying attention and saying enough and saying, we have a different idea of what the American family should look like and community should look like. And that is what I'm seeing across the board. So, I was on a panel a while back, and I said, a lot of the values that we say we subscribe to, during easy times, during peaceful times, it's easy to say we believe in those things.
Right, when they're not challenged.
When they're not challenged. It's easy to believe in free speech when it doesn't seem like the government's trying to crack down on free speech. It's easy to say that we believe in the golden rule when we aren't at risk of being arrested when we exercise the golden rule.
Yeah.
Right now we're being tested. And the good news is what we saw in Minneapolis and St. Paul, and what we're seeing in places across the country, including here in Los Angeles, has been the American people saying, no, you know what, at least a good number of the American people saying, we're going to live up to those values that we say we believe in. And as long as we have folks doing that, I feel like we're going to get through this.
So I hear and appreciate what you're saying about the agency of individuals. As we look toward our elected officials, our Democratic leaders, I think something that I've been having a lot of trouble reconciling is for so long it's felt like Democrats are solely focused on protecting norms, institutions, processes, and then you've got a Republican Party that sees what it wants and will find a way to get it. Laws be damned, Constitution be damned, rules be damned. And we're seeing that play out right now.
Which Brian is absolutely wrong. It's not laws be damned, Constitution be damned. We see that the only party that we've seen uphold the Constitution, uphold the laws is the Trump administration in these situations such as with ICE. And so it's funny because he calls this out and he says this is what they are doing. They're, regardless of what he's saying here and how he's trying to sort of portray the Republican Party as what he thinks it is, so out of touch with politics, where he's so stuck in his bubble to call for, to talk about these instances in the sense of Renee Good, in the sense of Alex Preddy, in the sense of what he continues to portray on his podcast is an absolute lie. The Trump administration, time and time again, is in battle with the woke judges the Obama era judges, the Clinton era judges who continue to, the Biden judges who continue to try to stop Trump at every bend, just like every Democrat tries to do, like Zohran Mamdani, and like those in Congress and the House and the Senate, where they want to stop Donald Trump because this is their prerogative. This is their main goal, rather. And it's funny that he says this when he's absolutely wrong in this statement here. And we've proven it time and time again on this broadcast, on this program. I'm going to let this play out a little bit longer. One second.
And so, given this massive asymmetry, where it often leaves us feeling like it's a Lucy pulling the football away from Charlie Brown over and over and over again situation, what needs to be done? And do you think that our Democratic leadership and our Democratic elected officials understand that for the first time?
Well, look, I think we have to acknowledge that we've got the harder job, right? So we believe in government as a tool for good, as a potential force to create more jobs, and as a way to make sure that the planet doesn't roast, to make sure that as we move forward.
See, the problems with what Barack Obama is saying is the issues that the Trump administration is trying to tackle, and I missed a little bit of it here, but the issues that the Trump administration is trying to tackle is constantly being at a huge opposition from the other side of the aisle, the Democrats or the left or whoever is against Trump. And this is the main issues. He begins to talk about the Senate. He begins to talk about why it's so hard. And then he talks about, he sprinkles this throughout his talk here, throughout his podcast, speaking specifically about politics, is the way that the the Democrats will seek to do is they will make it happen, but they want to get the majority of the Americans to sort of agree with what they are attempting to do. And maybe their sort of messaging is better. Maybe it's the fact that they just are brainwashed, or whatever the case is, that the Democrats, whatever they do, everything is good. It's the complete reversal of what we've seen with what Trump administration is doing. So how Obama was deporting many during his time, and then Trump is trying to deport as many as he is trying to, where he's getting such backlash and such violent outbreaks in states like Minnesota and even what's happening in LA. This wasn't happening under the Democratic rule. It just wasn't. And so he's trying to dance around these types of words, and he's trying to relieve himself of, taking responsibility, or relieve himself of, the accountability when it comes to when he was in power. It's just crazy. You say, talk about brainwash. This podcast is brainwashed. Okay, so in what way is this podcast what way is this podcast brainwashed? Explain why. I'd like to know why. You say, you're from Jersey. Welcome. Glad you're here. Says the people that constantly defend Obama, when the documents that we've seen from DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, literally investigating the Steele dossier of the Russia collusion hoax, and everything that is, all the evidence pointing to what Obama did to turn the election. Yeah, brainwashed. Interesting. So Barack Obama, his sort of witty responses, his elegant speech is not so elegant when you put him against a long form podcast. He begins to fall apart real easy, and his democratic way of speaking, which sounds like every other Democrat, really begins to show. And so I just found this funny because this is also one of the clips that are going viral. It's like him and Hillary Clinton are just in the limelight for these two sort of interviews that they did. Hillary's was probably way worse than Barack Obama, but Barack Obama, this tells you the sort of level of stupidity that the Democrats are on. I mean, even Barack Obama himself, who makes these types of statements? And I don't know, maybe he second guessed it after he said it. Let's take a look.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in what is it?
Area 51.
Area 51. There's no underground facility.
Huh? aliens are real, but I haven't seen them. Basically, no evidence. Yes, I'm live. No evidence that aliens are real. That makes no sense. That makes absolutely no sense at all. So then where are they? Let's let them cook a little bit longer.
Unless there's this enormous conspiracy and they hid it from the President of the United States.
What was the first?
That's all he says. So he say you do hate Brian Taylor Cohen. He's just so bad. He's so bad. It's funny because we've looked over a clip of when he had Bernie Sanders on, and Bernie Sanders basically said, what we're trying to do is do a copy and paste of Zoran Mamdani across the United States of America. It's exactly what he wants. But the reality is, we're looking at what's happening in New York, and New York is absolutely, I mean, I think so. We're seeing reports of New Yorkers frustrated by how Zoran Mamdani is, running the show. That he has no sort of background in running anything as big as New York City. And now he's the mayor of New York City. I mean, how crazy is that? You have no experience, and New York decides to elect a mayor who has no experience in this. And he's saying we need to tax the rich more because we have no money. The deficit that we're in, the $12 billion deficit, we need more money. So we're going to increase the taxes for the rich to get that money. Because we know that socialism doesn't work. Socialism, and it's funny because people will say, well, socialism is in the Bible. Socialism is in the Bible. Okay. You have to understand that when you look at what socialism is in the book of Acts, socialism is a concept that only works if people willingly participate in this act. Where you have in the case of Polymarket, where they opened the very first free grocery store in New York City, donating hundreds of meals. But it's funny because socialism only works, again, only if people participated by willingly doing so. So when you see the example given in the book of Acts, where people begin to sell off their property, they give the portions to the ministry. This was a willingful act of the church. That it only works if people are willingly doing it, not forced by increasing taxes, by forcing policies on American people in order to fulfill the communistic, socialistic ideas that they want to, completely realize. And we've seen this fail time and time again in many different countries. So, somebody said both parties are corrupt. They can be. And I think it's difficult in the day in which we live because we're the American people where the American people like me and you, we get to go on these podcasts and it goes back to the same messaging of what people say to me on this show. It's like, just because you have the mic, just because you have the equipment to do so, doesn't mean you should say anything. The reality is that the American people have the best voice possible because we're in the trenches with each other. And so we have to go back to the foundation of which the fathers established, the founding fathers established this nation, which is that we are the people who hold the power over the government. The majority hold the power over the minority. But what has gone wrong especially with the Democrat Party, like Zoran Mamdani, he's a perfect example of this, but because he wants to bloat government, he wants to add all these, different positions in his government, and now he has to fund them. He has to figure out their salary, has to figure out how he's going to pay them for the jobs that they are to do. And his policies are just falling apart right before the New Yorkers who voted for him. But the New Yorkers that have been there for years, time and time, uh, mayor after mayor. There's this woman who was there she's been there her whole life, 26 years. And she's saying that, this is unlike anything we've ever seen in New York City ever, when it comes to trash, when it comes to the snow buildup, when it comes to simple things that you'd expect to be taken care of, having been done the last couple of administrations. And so what I'm referencing back here to the founding fathers is the founding fathers understood the principle of, they understood that some of the bad ideas where they wanted to make, and this is where the Great American Experiment comes from. Right? The Great American Experiment is taking ideas of the scripture, and utilizing those ideas in order to formulate a better government. Because ultimately, freedom comes from our God. We are endowed with these freedoms by our Creator, as it says here in the Declaration, that all men are created equal. And if we can't understand just the basics of humanity, because what the left likes to make it about is about race, is about the minority group, is about elevating, all income streams to a universal basic income. These are like their dream goals to bring America into this position, into this point of sort of this dystopian reality. And that will never work. That will never work. It will never work because it has been tried in other nations, even under intense nations like under Mao. There is so much going wrong with the Democrat Party and how far they've fallen from where they used to be. And they're so radical at this point of using American citizens as cannon fodder and taking that and using it to their advantage. Smooth Bandit, you say earlier in a comment, you say, I'm from NYC. How long have you lived in NYC? And by the way, you say our socialism, this is somebody else, say, Knight, our socialism would just allow billionaires to pay less in taxes. What do you mean our socialism would just allow billionaires to pay less in taxes? The idea of socialism really is looking at these two. When we looked at the letters of Karl Marx in the Communist Manifesto, talking about the establishment of democracy, the establishment of this sort of proletariat ruling class, it's funny because some of these ideas come from what he's pulling from, what he's drawing from is scripture too, which is just insane. But he gets it wrong. He gets it wrong. Again, it will not work unless you have a willingness from the people in order to provide such things, such as a free grocery store. You say universal healthcare is dystopian. Have you been to Canada? Canada, I've had actually a couple of people in the chat who, Canada is actually my third watched viewer on this podcast, and they make up, I think, about 8%, where the UK is second and the United States obviously is first. But it's funny because those folks that have joined in from Canada have talked about how bad these systems are, such as universal health care. Somebody said, have you waited to see a doctor for 8 months like Canada? It's not even really about universal healthcare anymore. Insurance companies have too much control and need to be broken up. Yeah, and I think this is where a lot of the issues came with the Obamacare and what the Trump administration is trying to dismantle is removing the power from the insurance companies and putting it back into the hands of the Americans. And so, very bad in Canada. Yeah, it's good to see folks that are that can understand something as simple as just even healthcare and what's going on there, and other places that practice this. Say there was a brief period after the Great Depression when that wasn't true. Yeah, look, there's examples in American history where ideas like this have been tried and tested, and in certain circumstances, some things can, I guess, work, but they end up falling apart because then you get people who are just too greedy. Capitalism can grow. What's the word I'm looking for? Capitalism can also create greedy people. We see this all the time, but it stifles. And I think who does a really good job at going through this in detail is Hillsdale College, because they go over this class, which is free actually. But they talk about that capitalism versus communism or socialism, it stunts growth in industries where manufacturing, where these systems, they begin to slow down because there's no incentive. Unlike in a capitalistic society, there's no incentive. You say communism and socialism had failed every society. They really have. They really have. And I think the only good example you're ever going to see about socialism working in the first place is in the scriptures and what you see in the book of Acts. But it's contingent on a very specific type of willingness to do so. But even then, again, it's capitalism and socialism only work so long as you have an endless supply of money. But we know that can't happen. So until you run out of other people's money, then it just doesn't work. And it's funny because even Marx's own mother said about him that she would hope that he would get a job and stop living off of their money. You say, what econ curriculum include Bible scriptures? Probably none. I don't know. But they won't look at the scriptures because they don't want to use the scriptures as any basis for anything. Just like all government institutions or, educational systems, they want to rid themselves of anything concerning the Bible and historical facts that we've been able to go through, when talking about the Bible. You say private healthcare will always be more expensive for the user because you have all the same expenses plus the profit margins. Yeah, there's just so much that so much even way out of my sort of level of understanding when it comes to things like this, like healthcare and all that stuff, where you get into the nitty gritty in order to understand or fully realize a good healthcare system. We've been under such a bad healthcare system, under such a expensive, right? It really wasn't good for us to be under these subsidies, these ACA subsidies that Obama had us on, because it artificially brought down these insurance prices, only to realize that when they expired how much these insurance prices actually were. And these bad policies, they really have a terrible effect on the American people. We're the ones feeling it. We're the ones feeling these policies. And the only way we can change this, which, I mean, albeit I think J.D. Vance says it well, that if you have a problem, take it to the ballot box. It's a very good way of putting it, that the only way you can change things really is by taking it to the ballot box, how it should be. Of course, being vocal about it. And what we want to start doing more on this broadcast is talking more and focusing more on California. As we come to these midterm elections, we're seeing two Republicans at the top of the sort of each of the pre-primary polls. You're seeing Chad Bianco win a majority in these polls. You have Steve Hilton coming in second. However, we need to really move the needle, because a lot of them are saying, Steve Hilton, what he's saying, and many others are saying, look, the Democrats aren't just going to let California be won by Republicans. They're not going to do that. They're going to pour a whole lot of money into California, into their elections, into the, what's the word I'm looking for? Into the campaign, that's the word I'm looking for, into the campaign of the Democrat, who they want to run, Katie Porter or forget the other folks, even the mayor, right? Karen Bass is up for re-election, and somebody else wants to take over her spot, which another Democrat socialist. How are we going to let California continue to fall deeper into the most ridiculous authority that we've seen California? Like, I don't understand it. I don't understand how Californians can continue to vote Democrat. I really don't. Even when you look at the map, it's so funny, because during the 2024 elections, when you looked at California, immediately it went blue. Immediately. Like, it took no time to call California's election. And when it came to Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, but when you looked at California, you saw the majority of California red, but because of the densely populated areas such as San Francisco, such as LA, this is really where it takes the cake. But the rest of California really doesn't. And it's so funny, because there's folks, I forget where they were, convening. I think it was, I don't know, some part in California. They want to split from the hot metropolitan areas. It's so funny. And Marissa says it's ignorance. That's why they are, it's so hard to tell when it comes to like the older folks that, I don't know. I'd really want to know. I'd really want to talk and just have that conversation as to why some of the baby boomers, some of those that already own homes, where they continue to vote Democrat, why they continue to vote Democrat. It'd be an interesting conversation to understand why. Ultimately, they have nothing to worry about. They don't want to, I think many that vote Democrat, they don't really care about passing on the wealth to the next generation. And this is something that the scripture talks about. The scripture actually talks about leaving wealth for your children's children, not even your children necessarily, but the enough wealth to pass down to get to your children's children. That's the biblical precedent that God makes in the scriptures. That's just a way to make sure that people don't want voting don't vote. That's weird. Yeah, even things like voter ID, that's a big one. You say it's easier to move out. I got one more year until I retire early, and my youngest graduates high school. It's interesting. Free healthcare isn't a great idea. We are a military, and it is a rough insurance to have. Even though it's covered, getting treatment is harder. That's what happens when you let government take control. Yeah, this is pathetic. What about vote with your dollar? The foundation of capitalists' market is that completion balances cost. Yeah, I mean, I guess, right? You can talk about this sort of this question that you pose about what about vote with your dollar? Sure, but it takes the American to actually do something. Yeah, sure, you can vote with your dollar. You can pump your money into whatever type of organization you believe in. But again, if the American people really want something to change, they're going to go and do it themselves. This is literally the founding of the American, the sort of drive that the founders of America had. That in order to create a society such as this, which it really is the greatest society that we've ever seen. We have the laws that we currently have, freedom of speech, and all this other things that we can just go down line by line. The Second Amendment, all these things that other nations don't have, is what makes America so great. The fact that people can oppose the government, obviously in a way that's not sort of threatening the government by, I can't even go there, but like death threats to presidents, all that stuff. You guys know, right? We're talking about you can protest the government and not get killed for it, as what we've seen. Look at the example of Iran. You have women on the streets of New York, women on the streets of LA, where they're being asked by interviewers about Iran. Like, would you want Sharia law here in America? Would you want Sharia law in your city? And they refuse to answer when you go too deep into it. But the reality is, when you have leaders or when you have countries like Iran who have killed upwards of possibly, anywhere from 35 to 60,000 people who are protesting in the streets. And not only that, now you have what we're seeing in LA too, where there's a massive crowd gathering, a massive protest over the Iranian regime. This is what is being broadcasted from ABC 7 News. Help is on its way. You got Donald Trump in the middle. I'm really curious as to who this sort of group is, because no way would we see a Democrat group, with a big fat Donald Trump sign in the midst of it. I don't know. Maybe they're all coming together. Maybe they're just coming together under to oppose the Iranian regime. I don't know. He said he responds to comments, but not in a constructive or competent way. Is this guy talking to someone? I feel like he's just jumping from random topic to random topic with barely any thread. Look, I'm going through some of the comments here. It's all random. It's not really even sort of strung together as much as I typically have with this podcast, where I'm going through a series of, connected issues. So a lot of it, obviously, just my personal thoughts, and you don't have to. If you don't want to listen, don't listen. It's all good. You say, why do we keep bringing up God? Because God governs in the affairs of men. This is, again, something that one of the founding fathers have said. This is Benjamin Franklin. God governs in the affairs of men. And this is absolutely true. Not only that, does God say in his scripture to something that we can apply in our lives is seek the welfare of your nation. Not only that, what it says in from Jeremiah 29:7 versus what you see even in the New Testament of Timothy, talking about praying for your leaders, praying for those in authority. That in the book of Daniel in chapter 2, where it says that God establishes kings, he removes kings. Marissa, you say it right. We are in one nation under God. You make a very common sense point. It's like we have this in our Pledge of Allegiance. I mean, you can't pledge your allegiance to America if your allegiance is to your country of origin. It just won't work. And this is why you have people like Ilhan Omar, who has her allegiance to Somalia, or she wants to, change America's policies in order to fund. And we looked at this on the broadcast, where she wants to get America to fund Somalia, make Somalia great again. And so, and there's a let me see here. There is a representative named Wesley Hunt who is seeking to introduce legislation to establish a 28th Amendment. Going back to what I was just saying, requiring every member of Congress to pass a basic civics exam before taking the oath of office. Those entrusted with representing the American people should first demonstrate a clear understanding of the Constitution, our history, and principles that built this nation. Knowledge of our founding ideals is not optional. It is essential. Because protecting America's future begins with honoring its past and safeguarding the foundations of this republic, which starts with leaders who truly understand it.
Many people,
and I
in
think
this
he's
room,
very. That's the video that I was about to play, but very astute fellow here, and gosh, it's worth mentioning because of the trajectory that we are headed down in America. That we're going to see midterms come around, and when midterms come and go, and then soon it's already going to be here by 2028. We're going to see the presidential elections, and whether J.D. Vance takes the cake or not, whether America wants to go and turn around, I think we're going to witness the demise of America, because we're going to see the likes of an Abigail Spanberger completely ruin America. She knows how to run her sort of party. And it's funny because I think Barack Obama was talking about this on the podcast. I think it was Barack Obama talking about Abigail Spanberger, where she ran as a senator. I forget the term that he used. Senator modest, Senator Democrat. I don't even remember. Anyway, that her campaign was center focused. But look how she's been able to use her powers as a Democrat to implement whatever she wants to implement. In the case of these 50 new taxes that they want to implement. So this is so funny. It's just so funny that Republicans in many cases don't know how to use their power within the confines of obviously their within their powers of their party, the congressional powers, the executive powers, the judicial powers. Democrats most certainly know how to use it, and they'll weaponize it if they so want to. We saw this under Joe Biden. So anyway, guys, it is 12:10 a.m. my time. I'm sure it's late with you guys. I know Dead Man Lives, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning for you. Get some rest. And we're going to be revisiting some of these videos with Barack Obama and this podcast that we were watching with Brian Taylor, which I think it's just hilarious. But anyway, even with Hillary Clinton and what she, in the Munich Security Conference and some of the statements that she made here, kind of wild. We're going to have to go over that stuff. 3:10. My goodness, go to sleep, my guy. God bless you all. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. And please consider subscribing, liking the video. And we need to get the word out of this podcast so we can grow this show all the more. There's so much to be said, so much to be done into just the groundbreaking stuff that we want to do here. Thune is a plant. Well, maybe. John Thune. Crazy. 2 a.m. YouTube Punk Standard Time. So always open to hearing your guys' thoughts concerning the show. What you guys want to see more of, please email me at freedom@equallyyokeshow.com. I want to know your thoughts. How we can get this broadcast to be popping in the best way possible, the most informative way possible. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Dude, A. Matthews, you're joining in so late, bro. We're just about to close up shop here. And don't forget, aliens are real. We just haven't seen them. I'll see you guys in the next one. If you guys were here for the broadcast earlier, you guys understand. If not, rewind. It's more of a modest show, more of a lax show, because again, YouTube I believe is doing some serious censoring, and hopefully it all starts to just sort of stop its nonsense, and then we can go back to our regular scheduled broadcasting. I also have work, as many of you do. So, man don't work, man don't eat. It's a biblical, very biblical principle. And by the way, it's funny because when it comes to socialism and the conversation we're having, God also says that in the New Testament. You don't work, you don't eat. I think it's the New Testament. If not, it might even be the Old Testament. Better said when quoting it. So, all right, I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.